There's Justin. DJ Art Show. Welcome back to the D&J Art Show. We're back with another tutorial, even though it's kind of the same. It's the same drawing. It's my tutorial series I'm doing, basically where I go from beginning to end on an illustration showing what I do step by step. The last episode we did, I showed this basically. We talked about thumbnails. Let me grab those real quick. If you haven't seen the first episode, I'd recommend watching that before this one. Unless you just want to see something that's specifically in this video. Maybe you don't need help with a rough sketch or thumbnails, but we talked about thumbnails, planning an illustration out before you start, before you actually do it. So here we go, and as you can see, I kind of went with this one. A little bit different. I changed the angle of the hand, whatever. But for the most part, it's the same. We're drawing Mob from Mob Psycho 100. Great show. You should watch it if you haven't already. So we talked about thumbnails and rough sketches. So here I have my rough outline with, I use the 4H lead pencil, a harder lead pencil. All that means is that less graphite goes onto the paper when you use it. Like even if I was to press really hard, I wouldn't get any lines that were much darker than what you see here. And that's just to prevent you from getting a lot of excess graphite on your paper and smudging it, and it makes it easier to erase and stuff like that. So now that I have my... Oops, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties here. Excuse me. Now that I have my rough outline here of the overall illustration, it's time to get into the next step, which is contour lines, I guess you could say, even though we already kind of have done it a little bit, started a little bit. We're going to tighten up the pencils, and this is where it's going to start looking like more of an actual drawing. So I know a lot of people have been wanting to see how I do my pencil work. And this isn't going to be 100% how I normally do my, like when you see those pencil pieces I do where I just do pencil and all the lines are super dark and everyone's like, wow. By the way, thank you everyone who comments and says nice pencil work. We're going to go in and it's going to be darker than what you see here, but it's not going to be as dark as I normally go with a pencil drawing because since this is a beginning to ending illustration, I'm going to be covering coloring as well as inking and all that other stuff. So we're going to be inking over it, and we're going to erase the pencil once we ink it. So if we go too dark, we will get smudges, and it'll be harder to get the pencil out from under the ink with the eraser and stuff like that. So I'm trying to keep it cleanly. Again, I don't do these steps every time I do a drawing. I just do them for like commissions and like big illustrations and stuff like that. So without further, I've fucking yapped enough. We're going to get into doing some quote-unquote contour lines with this Pentel Graph Gear 1000 that I use with graphite that I got at Walmart. So, here we go. So basically you're kind of just tracing over what you've already drawn. So it's kind of like you're doing the drawing. I think I mentioned this in the last part, but it's kind of like you're doing the drawing multiple times, just each time you're putting more effort into it, I guess, taking more time on it, adding more detail with every step, tightening up lines, placing things where you want them to go. So that's what I'm doing here, is like I'm just going in with these crisper lines, darker lines, tightening up the pencils, showing so I know where everything's going to be when I ink it. And I did change some things from the last video. I made some adjustments to the outline. I made his head bigger. His head, in my opinion, wasn't really big enough. It kind of looked small in comparison to the body I gave him. So yeah, I adjusted that, and I adjusted the hand a little bit. With these tutorials, I know people like to see the whole process and people like to see how I edit or how I change the drawing around. But I don't know. I'm really picky, and sometimes I'll spend entirely too long erasing and redoing it, and erasing and redoing it. And I don't really want you guys to have to watch me do it over again, over and over again, several times. So I did that off camera. So I'm sorry if you guys wanted to see that. Or if you're like, it doesn't really look the same. I'm sure no one probably noticed, and I'm just being fucking paranoid. But here I'm going in and I'm drawing the collar to his school uniform. I may be exaggerating the collar a little bit. Don't think the collar's really this high. But you know what? Fuck it. Makes it look cool. Looks like a rock star. So we're going to leave it. We're going to keep it this high up. Take little creative liberties. Do. And again, I'm just going over what I've already drawn. It's kind of like tracing, but you're going in and you're polishing everything up, making it look cleaner. These are close to what the final lines will be. I'm not going to go as crazy with line weights in this stage as I will when I ink, which you'll see. I don't know if it'll be this episode or the next one. Depends on how long it takes me to do this part. But I am planning, like I said, to color this whole thing. Just a fucking tutorial from beginning to end. Around here doing where his shirt or his jacket, I don't know what you call it, school uniform, gets buttoned. Beep. Just like so. And for those of you who, I know a lot of people want to know how I do things in my quote-unquote style. One little thing I do that I don't really know why I do, I just like how it looks. I mentioned this in my inking tutorial. I'll try and get that linked in the description of this video so you can go watch that. I mentioned this thing I do where I web lines. And I'll demonstrate a little bit of that. I'll demonstrate what the fuck I'm talking about. So we're going to get rid of Mob here for a second. He's going to go bye-bye. And I'm going to grab a piece of paper. If I can find my sketch pad. Here we go. I'm just going to grab a random piece of paper out. I guess in a way, it helps convey depth in a way, or like convey one object or something being on top of another object. So here's what I'm talking about. So let's say I have a line. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Let's say I have a line like here where let the camera focus. Like here where you see the inside of his collar comes down and it stretches over his chest and comes up to his neck. You see how I kind of webbed the lines there? I do that to help convey, they're kind of like shadows. So let's say this is the collar. We'll add a little fold, feather it off there. We'll say this is the neck, feather that off. Here is the clavicle, other side. Tendon that goes up into the neck. Okay, so when I'm doing a pencil line work, let's say this is the rough outline here. Just to help convey what we're looking at, here's the collar. High collar, just like what we're seeing up here on the drawing. So when you have two objects that are laying on top of each other, whether it's two pieces of paper or whether it's clothes or even like a finger on top of a hand. Let me try and demonstrate it with the paper. I guess that's... You see this shadow here? You can still see a little bit of a shadow. And I forget what that's called. I think it's called like an occlusion shadow. I could be wrong. But here we're going to use my little pencil technique or whatever to convey that this collar, this fold of this cloth, is casting a shadow on his skin. So here I'll come up and I always do this, and then I like web it a little bit at the end here, and it goes into the neckline, see? Like that. And then we tighten up the line here. And so you get this impression that, or hopefully you get this impression that the collar is further up off of his skin at this point, because you see more of the shadow. And then it comes down here, and here where it comes to the clavicle, I'm going to do another web here, web it into the clavicle line. And so this conveys depth again, and like you'll see the cloth comes up and off of his skin here because his clavicle's pushing it off a little bit. So so that helps convey that the clothing, the fabric is being sort of a little bit, a very small bit lifted off of the skin by the clavicle. And the clavicle, how do I explain this? Sort of an anatomy lesson, but if you feel so a clavicle is like, I don't know how to explain this. So it's like this it's your collarbone, is what I mean by the clavicle. And it's sort of round. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to draw a line that makes it look like it's around the clavicle, like you've wrapped something around that bone. And we'll go in and darken it the same as we darkened up here. So here the shadow is cast on the clavicle, and you get the impression that the clavicle is a round surface. Or hopefully you do. See how the shadow changes? The shadow thickens and thins where the cloth gets closer to the skin, and then when it gets further away, the shadow becomes darker, more dense. So you convey that this cloth is almost stretched over an uneven surface. And I also like to do webbings here in these situations where cloth folds over itself. So here we have cloth folding over itself. So these folds are going to cast shadows as well. So here I'm going to do it again and try and convey that this cloth is casting a shadow on the fold. So, like that. So even with lines, you can call this like a form of shading, but I do this all in my line work. So even with lines, you use your light source, and you use how shadows behave to even create lines. So that's what I do. It's enough for that demonstration, but that's what I'm doing here. I don't know, you're not really going to see his clavicle much in this drawing. Maybe a little bit right here. There, I'm going to do what I just did. Yeah. Oh, whoa. Okay, wow. Camera's having some issues. Get to focus. Come on, buddy. There we go. Okay. So yeah, I just wanted to show what I mean when I say webbing the lines, I guess. Here I'm doing it too with the neck, where the neck meets the chin, and then I did it here where the neck, or where the jawline goes behind the collar. Yeah, so light sources come into it. Even you gotta be thinking in things in terms of shadows and stuff, even so early on as the line work. Or I do, at least. You don't gotta. Again, disclaimer. I never gave the disclaimer in this episode, but this is the way I do things. This is not the way that things have to be done. Okay, there's a million different ways that you can do any given thing in a drawing. And none of them are correct or incorrect unless your way of doing a drawing is shitting on the paper and then throwing it into a fire. That's not really going to get you very far. But as far as techniques go, there's a million different ways to do line work. There's a million different ways to shade. There's a million different ways to color things. There's a million different ways to even structure a body, a human body, stylize things. And none of them are correct or incorrect. These are just the way I do things. So don't think that this is the law. and that you must do things this way. If you find a way of doing line work that you think looks better, or a way of holding your pencil, even holding your pencil, that you think looks more, or that you feel is more comfortable, then do it that way. There's no proper way to do any of this stuff, really, within reason. Obviously, like I said, you're not going to get very many beautiful drawings if your way of drawing is, you know, crumpling up the paper and throwing it against the wall as hard as you can. I'm going to go in and do the eyes here. Another thing I changed was the eyebrows. Eyebrows are very, very important when it comes to facial expressions. A lot of people don't. I feel like anyway, a lot of people don't realize how important eyebrows are when it comes to doing facial expressions or conveying emotions. I'm actually going to show something here. I think it'll be cool to show. Do another little demonstration. So we'll do it on this piece of paper. Let's say you have a face. I'm just going to draw a quick little head here. The ear. Okay. I'm going to draw some pretty wide eyes here. Just bear with me. Hopefully this will be mind-blowing. Not really mind-blowing, but hopefully it will be helpful. I'm just going to draw a face. Maybe the ear way too fucking big. Okay. Ear doesn't really matter. Whatever. We'll suggest some eyelashes. I'm not gonna draw hair or anything. I just need a face. The eyes in here. Hopefully don't make her look too derpy. That's kind of derpy. Oh boy. Okay. There we go. A little bit better. Color in the pupils here. Or I guess, whatever, the inner eye. Okay, not really important. Anyways. Alright, so we have a facial expression here. We've got the eyes, we've got the nose. Let me zoom in a little bit. We got the eyes, we got the nose, we got the mouth. Right? We have a lot of things already in the picture here. Make your head a little bit big. God, I'm a mess. Just need a quick face, Justin. Come on. Okay. So we got a lot of things here. We got both her eyes, we got the nose, and we got the mouth. Okay, now you're probably like, okay, I can kind of get an idea of what kind of facial expression she has. Shocked, sickened maybe, a little perturbed. But now we're going to add eyebrows in. Okay, I'm going to come in and just add the eyebrows. Right, so now she looks sort of angry, kind of shocked a little bit. Maybe she's like, maybe someone just told her something really rude and she's like, oh my god, how dare you? This is her initial reaction to it. So we got a facial expression, but now I'm going to erase these eyebrows. Erase these these eyebrows. And we're going to add in more higher up eyebrows. Now it's like she's like, oh shit, what am I looking at? Right? I haven't changed anything except the eyebrows, but it's a different facial expression now entirely. At least in my mind, it is. Maybe it's up for interpretation what she's reacting to, or what you exactly you would call this expression. But it's a different facial expression. She doesn't look angry, right? All I did was change the eyebrows, and now I'm gonna do it again, one more time. I'm spending way too much time on this. This will probably be better for another tutorial, but whatever. We'll do this. See, now she looks sad, like she almost is about to cry. Maybe I'll add some tears here. Oh no, I'm sad. I'm sad. See? All I did was change, well, I mean, I added tears, but all I did was change the eyebrows, and it changes the facial expression. Right? And that's not to say that it's all in the eyebrows. It's just like, don't underestimate the importance of eyebrows. The camera's gonna have to zoom out. Whoops. So yeah, I obsess a lot over eyebrows being perfect. Not perfect, but you know what I mean. It helps convey, every part of the face helps convey the emotion that you're trying to do. Like, it's all important. But I don't know, I feel like just so you don't underestimate the importance of eyebrows, because people tend to focus on eyes a lot, and you should. But I don't know. I feel like people could, like, a lot of times you saw how, like, the facial expression changes completely when I change the eyebrows. A lot of times if you have a facial expression and it's not quite right, like, you don't really, I'm gonna adjust the camera. It's not quite right, you can't quite put your finger on it. Sometimes just changing the eyebrows will fix it. You'll be like, oh my god, okay, that was what was wrong. All I needed to do was change the angle of the eyebrows. Amazing. Justin was right. I should watch all of his tutorials whenever they come out. I'm just kidding. Oh yeah. Everything in the face is very important for conveying facial expressions, conveying emotion, but make sure my hair's not dangling in the camera. But don't underestimate the power of eyebrows. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do, guys. I'm going to kick it into time lapse. And when, if and when, not really a matter of if, it's a matter of when, I come to something that I want to touch on or explain my thought process behind, I'm going to stop the time lapse. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to explain what I'm doing or whatever, what have you. So it's not going to be time lapse from here on out, but I don't want these videos to be too terribly long. At this rate, it'll be a pretty long video. And I know there's probably some number of you guys who want to see everything. Like, you don't want any time lapse at all. You're totally fine watching the entire process from beginning to end. But I don't want the video to be 3 hours long. So I'm going to kick it into time lapse. Here in 3, 2, and 1. Alright guys, I'm back from time-lapse land. Got pretty much all the contouring done except for the background, the little rocks floating around. I also want to give a little bit of a pro tip here. See that? See this? See that bend? Looks real bad, doesn't it? Looks like garbage. Want to avoid that. Be very careful when erasing, because what happened was I was erasing up there, and if you're not careful, your eraser will grab the paper and just bend the shit out of it. So yeah, hopefully, I think it's not bent enough to where if I just put it under something heavy for a while, it'll flatten out for the most part. So fingers crossed on that. Not just the camera a little bit. So yeah, I think it looks pretty good so far. Just a little overview. As you can see here, God, lines on the hand that closest to us are thicker. That's line weights. Line weights are based on a number of things, but for the most part it's perspective. Objects that are closer to you will have thicker lines than objects that are further away. So other examples will be the rocks closer here in the foreground will have thicker line weights, similar to the hand here. For like, you know, because you see the lines on his hand and fingers here is thinner pretty much than the folds in his clothes and hair and all that other stuff and face. Just varying line weights based on what objects or what things are closer to you in the shot, the quote-unquote shot. I always think of things in terms of a camera, like what camera angle is it, or like the camera's above them. Like I always say that sort of like almost subconsciously, like I'll just say it and I'm like, yeah, you know what, it helps to conceptualize things. Actually I also haven't done the buttons on his fucking jacket yet, so we'll do that. What else can I say on this? There's plenty I could say. I'm sure there's a million questions people have regarding my process, what I do with pencils, or why I make certain decisions. Honestly, it's a lot of it comes down to muscle memory and subconscious decisions. Like, as you've noticed in my tutorials, I've had trouble describing things that I've literally done a million times because I don't really rationalize things to myself in my head. I just I'm gonna do this to make this look better, but why does it make it look better, or what's this technique called? Who the fuck knows? Know what I'm saying? Alright, we're coming here and doing the buttons. I mainly wanted to come back and talk about that little mistake I made with the eraser. It really annoys me when that happens, but it's gonna happen whether you try to avoid it or not. Just always keep that in mind, that you can't just go gung-ho with the eraser, because the paper will grab onto it and you run the risk of just bending the shit out of your drawing. I've done that a few times, and it really is the worst feeling in the world. Because, like, you've got this drawing, and it'll be going really well, and you're like, oh my god, I'm really excited to see this, and then you just bend the fucking shit out of it, and then you kind of just don't want to work on it anymore, and you're like, ugh. But you can't be afraid to start over. A lot of people get really... I used to do this, too, when I was younger. Starting out, I don't think it's really a youth thing. I think it's a like a newbie thing, I guess. I don't want to sound like a dick, but you can't get too attached to your drawings. People will be afraid of starting over. Like, they'll get something right and they'll be like, oh my god, I would never be able to do that again. The thing is generally you probably could do it again. You just got to have faith in yourself. Don't get so attached to drawings. If you need to start over, then you need to start over. And you know what? Earlier on, I think it's probably because you're not as fast, so even just drawing a face is a huge time investment. So you're like, oh God, I don't want to go through all that again. But if you need to start over, you need to start over. Don't settle for, if something's not looking the way you want it to, don't settle for. Don't go, oh well, try it again, redo it, erase it. Not the whole thing. It won't be the whole thing every time, but erase it, try again, erase it, try again until you get it right, or you get something that you like better. Don't be afraid to just start over from scratch. And you guys be like, "Oh, that's easy for you to say, Justin." And maybe it is. It is easy for me to say. I know that it's different for younger or newer artists, But hey, getting attached to drawings isn't good because if you're ever going to do commissions, if you ever want to do commissions for people, you're going to have people who you'll do a rough outline or whatever, and then you send it to them, and then they say, I don't really like this, or can this be different, and you'll find yourself having to start all over from scratch. But that's just the nature of things. So don't get too attached to what you've drawn. Don't be afraid to erase, start over, or adjust things. See, here at this stage, we're still in a stage where we can adjust things. You always have some wiggle room, but as the drawing goes on, you have much less room to maneuver and fix things, change things. For example, that's why I always do the initial rough outline with a hard lead pencil that doesn't put a lot of... I see lead, it's graphite, I hate that, but a hard graphite pencil that doesn't put down much when you draw, because it makes it easier to erase. You don't smudge when you erase. You can easily adjust things. Go in, erase a little bit, come back out. Really, really easy. And you can still do that in the contour line stage, but it's a little bit harder, and you run the risk, if you do it too many times, you run the risk of smudging. And nobody likes smudging. I always get people well, that's not true, actually. Jim Lee, he's a professional comic book artist for DC, draws a lot of Batman, a lot of Wonder Woman, Superman. He does not give a fuck. He has a Twitch stream where he'll stream himself drawing things for people, sometimes critiquing fans' comic submissions, and he doesn't give a flying fuck about smudging, honestly. Not even the slightest bit. I can't. I hate it. I'm a neat freak. This rock doesn't really make sense. Whatever. I also don't normally cross-hatch or anything in this stage, but I have zero fucking self-control. So, sometimes I do it just to help me understand where everything's at and remember, because very rarely do I ever do a drawing in one sitting. I always come back to it later. So it helps in the moment when you do something, just like a quick scribble, like, okay, here's where the hand's going to be, here's where this is going to be, this is where this is going to be. You'll forget, like you'll leave the drawing there, and you'll come back and you'll forget what the fuck you were doing. You're like, what is this line? It actually happened to me. We recorded a Doodle and Bits with that new Harime drawing that we recorded for the intro. If anyone wants to check that out, or if they've seen it, it's been a while since I worked on that drawing, and there were a lot of guidelines that I did and a lot of crazy scribbles that I did. At the time, I knew what they were for. Like, I do a little quick line for a bow that's like on her skirt or something. But then when you step away for that long amount of time, I think I actually didn't work on that drawing for months. I've just now come back to it. I forgot a lot of what the guidance lines I put in were for, and I'm like, what is going on? So I had to erase a lot of them and just kind of go over them with new ones. So That's something you'll want to be careful of. It happens. Not the end of the world. And I'm just going in and I'm doing all these rocks floating around him because he's all super psychic and someone pissed him off. Again, if you guys have not watched Mob Psycho 100, there's 2 seasons right now. I think the second season's over. I think they just aired the last episode, the season finale. You need to watch this show. It's crazy. It's way different from anything else out there. Really fresh, unique art style. The animation's amazing. The fight scenes are all immaculate. It's crazy. I don't know what kind of fucking budget they have, but there's a lot of talent on the team that's making this, cranking out these episodes every week. What other shows have I seen that I would recommend? I recommend watching The Promised Neverland. That's another new show that's come out. I think they're actually wrapping up their first season. That one's really good too. If you like kind of dark, morbid anime, check that out. What else? There's not really anything else that I'm watching personally other than like My Hero Academia, but who isn't watching that? But yeah, if you haven't watched Mob Psycho, please do yourself a favor. Now, I'm not really like super experienced when it comes to drawing things like rocks. Most of my experience has been drawing people. I have some experience drawing animals. Not a lot, not nearly as much as people. I first started out drawing, I drew a lot of realism, a lot of portraits of people or characters from movies or TV shows. And then on the side also I would draw anime and comic book type shit. And then I really just started to be passionate about that and only draw that. So I kind of just moved away from realism completely. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, I don't have a lot of experience drawing things like rocks or backgrounds or plants or anything like that, but I like to think I do okay. Drawing rocks everywhere here. There's something I'll do sometimes with lines, especially thicker lines. I'll do sort of like a bunch of lines parallel to each other, so rather than just doing what I did here where it's sort of one line, zoom in a little bit. Fuck. You can do lines like this. You know, that's a line. But if you want to do a thick line, you can either just like add more tone to the line like so, or you can go in and you can do a bunch of lines next to each other like that. So it looks like one solid line. Actually, right here kind of looks like a scribble. And you can taper it. So this helps you do thicker lines without like having to like push down really hard. You just go boom, 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 boom. Gradually moving out every time. It's kind of, and it'll give your work kind of a sketchy, cross-hatchy sort of look, feel to it. Because it's not really cross-hatching because, well, that's something else I'll do actually. Speaking of cross-hatching, sorry. I did it a little bit in this drawing, but I'll go in and be like boom, 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 and then that'll be a line. I'll go in and I'll cross-hatch across it. And it helps me keep it light while at the same time making it look dark, I guess. So, because the more hatching you do, the more layers you put on top of it, the darker it's going to get. So you do one layer cross hatching, go over it again. It's going to get darker every time. Go over it again. The more layers you put on, the darker hue you're going to get. Darker value. So yeah. But I actually haven't pressed hard on the paper at all. But I'm still getting darker, gradually darker and darker values as I go over it with more and more layers of hatching. And that works the same way with a gradient too. When you're building up a gradient, I have a hard time doing that with mechanical pencils. It's possible, but for gradients I tend to prefer normal type pencils, so you can lay. Let me get the 4H pencil over here. You can't really do it that well with the 4H pencil because putting down a gradient requires you to build up tones by leaving graphite on the paper, and the 4H pencil doesn't leave a lot of graphite on the paper, but you hold the pencil like this down flat to the paper and you'll just like build up a gradient. And the idea is to make it as smooth as possible or whatever. You don't have to, but gradients tend to be more uniform than cross-hatching. So you build up a tone, and then if you had a normal pencil, you would go in with that one layer, and then you come back in again, you press down harder, and you do the same thing, and do a layer. Right, that's how you would add shadows or darkness or whatever. Dimension, lighten up. Lighten your don't put as much pressure on the pencil. The lighter you'll get, and you'll blend. And working up a gradient, like using gradients like this, takes longer than cross hatching because you have to sit there and build up a tone, like you've seen me. Whereas this, when I was cross hatching, it would literally take me like 2 seconds to just be like boom, 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 and then go over it again. Yeah, that's not as good because I didn't spend as much but cross-hatching tends to be faster. For me, anyways. I'm sure some people don't like it because I know it comes down to speed. Whoops, that was way... It comes down to speed. I know a lot of people, you don't have to draw the lines perfectly parallel. It depends on your style of cross-hatching, honestly. And you'll get faster at it. I know I've seen younger artists trying to do it, and they'll sit there and painstakingly draw each line. You'll get better at just going. It gets to the point where you're fast. Like usually when I cross hatch, just takes me this long. I'll just go, boom, 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 boom. Just go like that, real fast. And I know some people newer artists will have trouble doing it that fast. It'll be like. But again, lines don't need to be perfectly straight. You're just using lines spaced so close together it builds up a tone from afar. Boom, 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 boom. Just gotta practice and you'll get faster at it. And you'll have more control over your hands so you can stop the lines when they need to be stopped instead of going over and putting line and making the line go over into an area where it doesn't belong, and then you're like, well, now it just looks like I scribble all over the paper. No rhyme or reason to it. But you'll get better with time. And again, I really shouldn't be cross-hatching in this stage, but I just don't have any self-control, if I'm being completely honest. But, yeah.
So, as you'll notice, Derek isn't here. He's actually here, but he's in the other room, because we've decided that I'm going to be doing tutorials by myself from now on. So, I don't have him to feed off of for saying stupid shit. But then again, these tutorials aren't really for goofing off like the other videos are, like our fun little challenge videos. But yeah, just going through, doing all these rocks, getting the background put in, convey that he's using psychic abilities. I might kick it back into time lapse here in a second. Oh wow, I was off frame. Ooh baby! Justin, I thought you were a professional. Just kidding. I'm not a professional at anything, ever, in my life.
I'm not signing checks that I can't cash here on the old D&J Art Show. That's our motto. D&J Art Show. Don't sign a check you can't cash. Or whatever. I don't know. I'm rambling at this point, but I hope you guys got some valuable lessons out of this. I hope I was able to at least sort of semi-explain some of the stuff I was doing, and then given the reasons for it. So I'm going to kick this back into time-lapse, finish up all these fucking rocks, and then I'm going to come back for a brief word, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Alright. 3, 2, 1, and a time-lapse. Alright, and I'm back for the final time for this video. We have successfully done the pencil contour lines for this illustration. Mob Psycho 100, fan art of Mob 100% Psycho mode. No, also, here's my reference. Looking at, it's actually a really sick wallpaper. But yeah, so I've been using for reference. So normally when I use reference, people always ask me if I use reference. I use reference all the time. So normally if I'm drawing a character, here's what I'll do. I'll go and I'll look up pictures of said character, like from a few different angles. So like maybe like a full body, and then maybe one that's like a close-up of just like their chest up area. Maybe one where they're in combat or something, if it's that kind of character from that kind of show. And then I just have like a few, like 4 or 5 images of that character. Then I think of a pose that I want the character to be in, and then I'll draw the pose, and then using the reference, I basically take that and put it onto the pose. So obviously you see here that is not the same pose as the one here on the drawing, but I use it to get the details of his uniform and how his hair looks when it's all flowy and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's how I use reference. So I don't really copy. You don't copy anything. You just decide on a pose, whatever, and then you look at the picture. I'll look at a bunch of different pictures of the character to get all the details of the clothing, what their hair looks like from different angles, their face, blah blah blah, and then you pick a pose that you want to put them in. Maybe they're kicking something or something like that. And then you just kind of, once you've got it roughed out, once you've got the pose roughed out and you feel the anatomy's good and all that other stuff, then you go in and you basically put the character over it. Almost like you're putting, like, I don't know, like a wrapping paper over the bare bones of your drawing. So now here it looks like an actual drawing. Next time we'll be inking it. I've already done an inking tutorial, but honestly, there's so many things to talk about each specific topic, whatever you're talking about. So hopefully, I'm sure that there will be something new I can say when it comes to that. So look forward to that. Next time we see old Mob here, he's going to be inked up. Well, not next time we see him, after the end of the next video. So yeah, next one's going to be inking, then coloring, and I'm excited. I hope you guys are liking these tutorials. I hope that I'm giving helpful information. If you have any questions, or after these tutorials, if you have any questions or you have any concerns, maybe you want to know about something that I did in the video that I didn't really touch on, like you saw me do something but I never said anything about it, you can ask me in the comments and I'll try and have an answer for you. If there's something you think I should be doing differently, if you want, I'm sure people will probably say they want less time lapse, but if there's anything you want me to include, maybe, I don't know, or anything you want me to improve on, or think of things that I could do differently to make it better, make it a better experience, then feel free to let me know in the comments. Be positive, at least. Don't be a dick, because then I'll ignore you and probably purposefully do what you roasted me about even more, because I hate you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, guys,
That does it for this episode of this tutorial series. Doing an illustration from beginning to end featuring Mob from Mob Psycho 100, as I've said 507,000 times.
Yep. So I think we're going to wrap this one up. I can't think of anything else I need to tell you guys, so I love you guys. Thanks for your support. Thanks for 500 subscribers. We reached that. Well, we're over that now, but that's the milestone we hit recently. So thank you guys for supporting us on YouTube, here on YouTube. Thanks to everyone who watches, that follows me on Twitter and Instagram, and Derek on Instagram and Twitter. We greatly appreciate it. So thank you very much for your guys' continued support. Hopefully we can continue to bring you the content, the sort of content that you want to remain subscribed for, or whatever. But yeah, that'll do it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one, next episode of D&J Art Show, whatever the fuck it is that we're doing. I love you. Peace out, babies. Doop-a-da, 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 doop-doop.